Jerusalem, the capital of Palestine, is considered one of the most important cities in the world. Jerusalem and its surrounding areas hold great significance because, according to Islamic beliefs, God sent thousands of prophets there, including prophets Abraham, David, and Solomon. According to Jewish tradition, the name Jerusalem was given by a great prophet's son, Noah's son, who called it the City of Peace. However, from ancient times until today, Jerusalem has rarely seen peace. This city is sacred to the three major religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Within Jerusalem, there is a holy area known as Beit al-Maqdis, the Holy House. On one side is the Western Wall, which is the holiest site for Jews. Not far from it is a church believed by Christians to hold the empty tomb of Jesus, making it a sacred place for them. Above Beit al-Maqdis is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the third holiest site in Islam after Mecca and Medina. When the Prophet Muhammad was in Mecca, he invited the people of Mecca to Islam for many years. However, only a few people accepted Islam, and those who did were mostly weak or poor, so they faced a lot of oppression from the powerful people of Mecca. Despite this, the Prophet reassured them, saying that although Muslims were currently weak, a day would come when they would defeat both the Roman and Persian empires. People in Mecca laughed at this, saying they couldn't even stand up against the people of Mecca, so how could they fight the powerful empires? But after the Prophet's passing, within a few years, Muslims defeated both the Roman and Persian empires in significant battles like the battles of Yarmouk and Qadisiyyah under the leadership of Caliph Umar. After defeating these two empires, Muslim armies awaited Umar's instructions on where to go next. From Medina, a letter was sent to Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, commanding him not to stop until the Persian capital had completely surrendered. Meanwhile, in the Roman Empire, after the Muslims won the Battle of Yarmouk, they quickly regained territories they had previously lost. After securing these areas, the Muslim armies awaited further instructions. Soon, a letter came from Medina, instructing Abu Ubaidah to take all available forces and head toward Jerusalem, the holy city of the prophets, and bring it under the control of the Caliphate. Abu Ubaidah gathered the Muslim forces in Syria and set out towards Jerusalem. After their great victory at Yarmouk, there was no one in the Roman Empire who could stop the Muslims, so they surrounded the city. However, the Muslims did not want to conquer Jerusalem through bloodshed, as they respected it as a city of prophets, and did not wish for any violence. They set up camps around the city and patiently waited for its surrender. But the highest priest of Jerusalem, Sophronius, despite seeing the vast Muslim army, did not surrender easily. He repeatedly sent letters to the Roman emperor, asking him to come and defend the holiest Christian city, Jerusalem, from falling into Muslim hands. However, after 4 months of waiting, no Roman general came to help him. The Muslims' victory at Yarmouk had broken the Roman army's strength, and they could no longer stand against the Muslims. Finally, after 4 months, Sophronius lost hope. When Sophronius, the priest of Jerusalem, finally decided to surrender, he sent a letter to the Muslim general Abu Ubaidah. However, he made a strange demand in his letter. He said he would only hand over the city if Caliph Umar himself came to meet him. But why did Sophronius want to surrender directly to Caliph Umar, rather than generals like Khalid ibn al-Walid, Abu Ubaidah, and others? This was because Sophronius knew Jerusalem's history very well. He knew that every time a king had conquered this city, they had often destroyed its heritage and buildings. The story of Jerusalem and Palestine begins far before this moment, and it's so interesting that both the Bible and the Quran frequently mention Palestine's history more than other regions. Palestine's story starts with Prophet Abraham around 4,000 years ago. Abraham was born in a city, which is in modern-day Iraq, and was the world's largest city at that time. Some ancient buildings from Ur still exist today. Abraham grew up there, but as he got older, he turned against the city's religion and invited people to worship only one God. The people did not listen to him, but Abraham did not give up. Eventually, the king grew so angry that he ordered Abraham to be thrown into a huge fire. However, when Abraham was thrown into the fire, everyone witnessed a miracle. Abraham walked out of the fire completely unharmed. After this incident, the people of Ur feared him and stopped harming him. Following God's command, Abraham left the city and settled for the first time in Palestine. Abraham had 2 sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Many prophets descended from Isaac's line, while only one prophet, Ishmael, came from Ishmael's line. Ishmael moved to Mecca in Arabia, while Isaac stayed in Palestine. After Abraham's passing, Isaac remained in Palestine with his son Jacob, also known as Israel, whose descendants are called the children of Israel. Jacob's son Joseph was forced to leave Palestine due to his brother's mistreatment. He ended up in Egypt, where he eventually became the prime minister. The children of Israel had a remarkable quality. They quickly became influential wherever they went. In Egypt, Jacob's 12 sons and their families soon rose to power and wealth. However, as they grew powerful, Egyptians became wary, fearing they would soon be dominated by the children of Israel. The Egyptian rulers and Pharaoh decided to enslave them before they became too powerful, seizing their businesses and belongings. They gathered the Israelites and treated them harshly, similar to how Hitler targeted certain groups. For the next 400 years, the children of Israel lived in slavery under the Egyptians until God sent them a prophet, Moses. Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt after 400 years of slavery, guiding them back to their ancestor Abraham's homeland in Palestine. When the children of Israel neared Palestine, they saw that in the 400 years they had been enslaved in Egypt, new and powerful tribes like the Amalekites and Amorites had settled in Palestine. God commanded Moses to prepare the 12 tribes of Israel for battle against these tribes. Moses did so, and the Israelites prepared for battle. However, the night before the battle, Moses sent spies to observe the Amalekites' strength. But just before the battle, these spies returned. The people said they could never confront the Amorites and the other tribes because they were far stronger and richer than them, and they also had more weapons. Hearing this, the Israelites lost all hope and threw down their weapons, telling Moses that he and his Lord should go fight, as they were not going to fight these people. Due to this behavior, God became very angry with them and told Moses in the Torah, "I showed the Israelites so many signs, but despite all of this, they refused to fight for my sake. Therefore, they shall wander in this desert for 40 years, and every one of them will die here. This is their punishment. Even their graves will be in this desert." And exactly this happened. Over the next 40 years, the generation of slaves who had escaped Pharaoh in Egypt perished entirely in the desert. During this period, both Moses and Aaron, peace be upon them, also passed away. A new generation of Israelites, raised with a free mindset, grew up over these 40 years. Under the leadership of Joshua bin Nun, they eventually conquered all of Palestine, and thus, after 500 years, the Israelites settled in Palestine once more. Joshua divided Palestine into 12 parts, and assigned each tribe of Israel a portion. For the next 300 years, these judges ruled Palestine. However, as time passed, these judges became corrupt, altering the verses of the Torah and making decisions based on their own will in exchange for money. Because of this, the original pure form of the Torah, which had been revealed to Moses, gradually started to vanish from the world. The corruption among the judges grew so much that, even when God sent prophets to correct them, these judges killed them despite knowing they were prophets. As a result of 300 years of corruption by these judges, the Israelites grew weak. This provided an opportunity for a powerful neighboring tribe, known as the Philistines, to invade Israel. The leader of this tribe was Goliath, who swiftly conquered large areas of Israel and even captured their capital, Jerusalem. Finally, after 300 years, the Israelites realized that it was the poor judgments of these corrupt judges that had led to their downfall. They gathered around the prophet Samuel and requested that he remove these judges and appoint a united and strong king for all of Israel to help them face their enemies. Samuel then chose Saul as the first king of Israel. Saul led the Israelite army to confront Goliath. Before the battle, Goliath stepped forward and challenged the Israelites to fight him, but no one from the Israelite army dared to accept his challenge, as Goliath was no ordinary man. According to Jewish sources and modern estimates, Goliath was about 9 feet tall. People think Goliath was unusually large, almost like a giant, but this is not entirely true. In modern times, there was a man named Robert Wadlow whose height gives us an idea of Goliath's height. For a long time, Goliath stood in front of the Israelite army, challenging them to fight. Finally, a young man named David came forward. People tried to dissuade David, reminding him of the massive difference in height between him and Goliath, but he was determined. Goliath laughed at the sight of this small boy coming forward. However, as soon as the fight began, David swung a stone directly at Goliath's head. The stone hit Goliath squarely on the forehead, and he fell to the ground, wounded right before everyone's eyes. Seeing their leader fall so easily, Goliath's entire army lost morale. Saul ordered the Israelites to attack, and soon after, Goliath's entire army fled the battlefield. David's bravery became renowned throughout Israel, and after Saul, David became the king of all of Palestine. David was the most powerful king of Palestine. After his passing, God granted his son Solomon a kingdom unlike any other. God gave Solomon control over the winds, birds, and jinn. Using this power, Solomon built a large temple in Jerusalem, known today as the Temple of Solomon. This temple was one of the largest buildings in the world at the time, and was not only a place of worship but also served as the Parliament of Israel, from where Solomon ruled his empire. After Solomon's passing, his son Rehoboam became the new king of Palestine. However, Rehoboam was not as wise a ruler as his father, leading to rebellions across Palestine. As a result, Solomon's great empire split into two parts. 10 tribes of Israel settled in one part, while only 2 remained in the other. This division weakened them, and they began fighting among themselves, which again made the Israelites so weak that another nation took advantage and conquered these 10 tribes. The Israelites were attacked, and 10 of their tribes were expelled from Palestine forever. According to Jewish scholars, these 10 tribes went eastward and perished there. Today, many historians believe that these 10 tribes are none other than the Pashtun tribes in Afghanistan and Pakistan. After they left, only 2 tribes remained in Palestine, the larger of which was the tribe of Judah. It was because of this tribe that the Israelites gradually came to be known as Jews. However, after some time, King Nebuchadnezzar of the Babylonian Empire attacked the Jews. He wreaked such havoc in Palestine that he killed thousands of Jews, set fire to the Temple of Solomon built by Prophet Solomon, and took the remaining Jews as slaves to his capital, Babylon. In this way, the magnificent empire of Solomon came to an end, and once again the Jews were enslaved. This time for 50 years, much like their ancestors, who had been enslaved by Pharaoh. After 50 years, God sent a savior for the Jews, a man named Cyrus the Great, the first major king of the Persian Empire in Iran. He attacked the Babylonian Empire with his army, defeated them, freed the Jews, and sent them back to Palestine and Jerusalem. He also gave them funds to rebuild the Temple of Solomon. Many Muslim scholars today consider Cyrus the Great to be the same person as Dhul-Qarnayn, whom we will discuss in detail another time. With Cyrus the Great's help, the Jews were once again settled in Palestine. Upon returning, the first thing they did was rebuild the Temple of Solomon on the same spot where it once stood. Although this temple no longer exists today, one of its walls, the Western Wall, still stands and is as important to the Jews as the Kaaba is to Muslims. For the next 500 years, the Jews lived in Palestine. But after 500 years, a new superpower emerged in the world, the Roman Empire. They conquered Palestine and took it from the Jews, making it a small province of their vast empire. As all the Jews now lived under Roman rule, God sent them another great prophet, Jesus, Isa, peace be upon him. By that time, the Jews had become so corrupt that they no longer listened to the prophets God sent to them. In fact, they had previously killed Prophet Zechariah, and Prophet John, Yahya, peace be upon them. Prophet Jesus, Isa, tried his best to guide the Jews, but except for a few, most Jews rejected him, calling him a false prophet. The Jewish leaders conspired with the Romans to have him killed. Just as they were about to execute Jesus, God saved him and raised him up, while another person was crucified in his place. Jesus was thus taken from the world, but gradually conflicts began between the Romans and the Jews. Because of their conspiracy against Jesus, God never forgave the Jews, and no prophets were sent to them after him. A short time after Jesus' departure, a war erupted between the Romans and the Jews, and the Romans decimated the Jewish population in Palestine. The Romans killed thousands of Jews in Palestine and even destroyed the main Temple of Solomon by setting it on fire. Since then, the Jews have been unable to rebuild this temple. However, the Jews believe that in the end times, a Messiah will come who will build their third and final temple on the same site in Jerusalem, and then they will rule over the entire world. The Romans placed a permanent ban on the Jews, prohibiting them from entering their holy city of Jerusalem. For the next 600 years, the Roman Empire continued to rule Palestine, and during this period, the entire empire, abandoning its previous religions, adopted Christianity. Up to this point, the story has only covered the descendants of Abraham's son, Isaac. But here, the story of the world changes dramatically because God sent his final prophet, Muhammad, from the descendants of Abraham's first son, Ishmael, who had settled in Arabia thousands of years earlier. While Prophet Muhammad was calling people to Islam in Mecca, another invasion took place in Palestine. This time it was led by the king of the Persian Empire, who captured Jerusalem, killed 100,000 Christians, devastated the entire city, and set its churches on fire. He also took away the cross on which Christians believed Jesus was crucified. Today, every church has a replica of this cross displayed inside. Shortly after this event, the Roman Empire defeated the Persians, recapturing Jerusalem. The Romans rebuilt Jerusalem and re-established the city after a major battle with the Persians. This battle was so significant that verses were revealed about it in the Quran's Surah Al-Rum, which we explained in a previous video. Following this victory, the Romans not only defeated the Persians, but also brought back the Holy Cross to Jerusalem, restoring the city completely. The Romans now believed there was no power left on earth that could challenge them, yet simultaneously, the Muslim Caliphate in Arabia was growing rapidly. The Caliphate had become so strong that, in the time of Caliph Umar ibn Al-Khattab, Jerusalem was once again surrounded by Muslim forces. The leader of Jerusalem, Sophronius, was well aware of the city's turbulent history and knew that anyone who had conquered it previously had utterly destroyed everything in it. Sophronius was concerned that the Muslims might do the same. He sent letters to Emperor Heraclius requesting support, but after 4 months with no help, Sophronius decided to surrender. However, he made one unusual demand. He would only surrender the city if Caliph Umar ibn Al-Khattab himself came to meet him. Sophronius had heard about Umar's unique character, that he was vastly different from other rulers and did not like to be called a king. Despite being one of the world's most powerful people, Umar lived a simple life like ordinary people. Stories of Umar's humility were famous worldwide. Once a Roman general visited Medina, the Muslim capital, expecting to find Umar in a grand palace. Instead, he found Umar resting under a tree, using a rock as a pillow. Knowing of Umar's simplicity and integrity, Sophronius hoped that he would spare Jerusalem from destruction. So, the Muslim commander Abu Ubaidah sent a letter to Caliph Umar, stating that only he could secure the peaceful surrender of Jerusalem. Upon reading this, Umar gathered his closest companions and asked them for advice. Uthman ibn Affan advised him not to go, as the Romans were already on the verge of defeat and did not deserve such honor. However, Ali ibn Abi Talib suggested that Umar should indeed go to Jerusalem. Umar preferred Ali's advice, and for the first time in his caliphate, left Medina to head toward Palestine. Hearing this, Muslim forces in the Roman Empire eagerly awaited their caliph's arrival. Before leaving, Umar appointed Ali as the leader of Medina and entrusted him with control over all of Arabia. Then, Umar, one of the most powerful men in the world at that time, set out for Jerusalem with only a few companions, a single camel, some food, and essential supplies for the journey. The distance between Medina and Jerusalem was approximately 1,400 kilometers, a journey that took nearly a month to complete by camel. Upon his arrival, Umar was greeted by Khalid ibn al-Walid and Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan, who were dressed in expensive clothing to mark this important day. Seeing them in such attire, Umar became very angry, picked up stones from the ground, and threw them at Khalid and Yazid, saying, "What are you wearing? Have you so quickly abandoned our ways and adopted the ways of the Romans?" As Umar approached Jerusalem, word spread among the Christians that the Caliph himself had come to their city upon their request. Here, Umar signed one of the most important agreements of his life, an agreement that the world remembers to this day. For the first time in history, a ruler conquered Jerusalem in a way that ensured its protection and respected its people. In the name of God, the most merciful, Caliph Umar ibn Al-Khattab issued a decree for the Christians of Jerusalem. He assured them that those who wished to leave could do so, while those who wished to stay would be unharmed. Muslims would not damage any church, seize anyone's property, or force anyone to convert to Islam. No mistreatment or racism would be allowed. Additionally, Muslims would not forcibly take anyone's land. However, as in other cities, Christians were required to pay a tax called Jizya. One point of contention arose between Umar and the Christians during this agreement: the status of the Jews. The Christians held a deep-seated enmity toward the Jews, and for 600 years, the Romans had forbidden Jews from entering Jerusalem, even though it was a sacred place for them. Before surrendering, the Christians demanded that the Muslims continue this ban. Umar did not agree to this, and wrote in the agreement that Jews would be allowed to visit Jerusalem whenever they wished. However, Umar understood that if Jews resettled in Jerusalem after 600 years, it could lead to conflict between Christians and Jews, as Jerusalem was a holy city for multiple faiths. So he decreed that Jews could visit the city, but were not allowed to settle there. This order from Umar was considered brilliant, as even today, the resettlement of Jews in Palestine has led to ongoing conflict in the region. After writing this agreement, Umar sealed it with the ring of the Prophet Muhammad. Khalid ibn al-Walid and other Muslim generals served as witnesses. This agreement brought great joy to the Jews, who, after 600 years, could see their holy city of Jerusalem once more, thanks to Umar. These were the same Jews who had often conspired against the Prophet Muhammad and Islam. But now the Muslims, standing before the Christians, advocated for the rights of the Jews. When Sophronius's messenger returned to Jerusalem with Umar's agreement, the Christians celebrated, as they had feared Umar might destroy the city, as previous conquerors had. But Umar did not do so. Instead, for the first time in history, Jerusalem was peacefully conquered without bloodshed, bringing Umar's name to the lips of every Christian in Jerusalem. They eagerly awaited a chance to see this remarkable leader. Umar then left the Muslim headquarters to enter Jerusalem. As he neared the Muslim army camp, Abu Ubaidah and the other Muslims welcomed him. Some of the Muslim generals suggested that Umar wear fine clothing and ride a beautiful horse in honor of the occasion. However, Umar refused and said, "There was a time when we were among the weakest and most backward people in the world. The respect we have today is not due to our clothes or our horses, but solely because of Islam." With this, he proceeded toward Jerusalem. Here, an interesting story and a common misconception come up. It is said that Umar traveled to Jerusalem with his servant, sharing a single camel and taking turns riding it. As they approached Jerusalem, Umar supposedly allowed his servant to ride the camel while he walked. This story has been widely told, but it lacks authenticity. In reality, the Muslim army was camped very close to Jerusalem's gates, and thousands of camels were available if needed. Additionally, this story is not found in any authentic Islamic sources. According to the latest research in Islamic history, this tale was likely created by later storytellers. Umar entered Jerusalem, and his simplicity greatly impressed the locals. Sophronius led him to the church of the Holy Sepulchre, the holiest site for Christians. When the time for prayer came, Sophronius invited Umar to pray inside the church. Umar declined, saying that if he prayed there, future Muslims might convert the church into a mosque. He did not want Muslims to alter this holy Christian site. Umar's foresight proved correct, as a mosque named after him, the Mosque of Umar, was later built nearby. From there, Umar went directly to the Al-Aqsa compound and found it in a terrible state, littered with debris due to the Romans' animosity towards the Jews. Caliph Umar and his companions personally began cleaning the Al-Aqsa area with their own hands. After the site was cleared, Umar called a meeting with the companions to decide where to build the mosque. Ka'b al-Ahbar, a companion who had been Jewish before embracing Islam, suggested building the mosque behind the rock at Al-Aqsa so they could face both the Kaaba and the rock while praying. Umar was displeased with this suggestion and rebuked him, saying that traces of Jewish traditions still lingered in him. Umar then ordered that the mosque be built in front of the rock, facing the Kaaba and with their backs to the rock, symbolizing that the Qibla, or direction of prayer, had changed for the world. Thus, the foundation of the Al-Aqsa Mosque was laid, and whenever Muslims prayed there, the rock and the structure above it were behind them. Umar ordered the construction of a simple wooden mosque at the site, and after it was completed, he requested Bilal ibn Rabah to give the call to prayer, or adhan. Bilal, who had settled in Syria after the passing of the Prophet Muhammad, had vowed never to call the adhan again. However, given the significance of the day and Umar's request, Bilal agreed and called the adhan from the Al-Aqsa area for the first time. The companions present were moved to tears, as it reminded them of the days in Medina when Bilal would call the adhan during the Prophet's time. During those early days, Muslims had few resources and often lacked food, yet the Prophet had prophesied that a day would come when Muslims would defeat both the Roman and Persian empires and even conquer Jerusalem. Now that prophecy had come true. Muslims had become a superpower, defeating these mighty empires, and Bilal was once again calling the adhan. Since that day, for the last 1400 years, the adhan has been called in Al-Aqsa every day, marking the peaceful conquest of the prophetic city of Jerusalem by Caliph Umar. The conquest of Jerusalem was something the Prophet Muhammad had foretold, but he also mentioned something shocking. During the Battle of Tabuk, the Prophet had once said to a companion, "Listen to some signs of the last day from me, my death, the conquest of Jerusalem, and after that, a plague that will claim the lives of many Muslims." This prophecy came true. Following the conquest of Jerusalem, a plague spread through the region, claiming the lives of thousands of Muslims, including prominent generals like Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah and Mu'adh ibn Jabal. Even the world-renowned general Khalid ibn al-Walid passed away due to the wounds he had sustained in battle. With the passing of these leaders, a new generation had the opportunity to step up, including Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, who would later play a significant role in Islamic history.